Hi, I'm Sarah from So, and you know that you can use a serger for wovens and knits, and I do know the appeal for them. I have one myself for a long time, since almost when they came out when I started sewing. They are 100% a useful tool and machine to have, but I don't think they're 100% necessary unless you're going to do things like prototyping or sew professionally or sell your items, and even then you can get around using a serger. I don't think you absolutely have to have one as a home sewist unless you're interested in it, because the finishing on a serger is unparalleled. It is pretty speedy and easy, great for sewing knits and finishing the insides of garments, but they are kind of expensive. They're kind of fiddly. It is one more thing you need to buy thread for. The thread isn't cheap. The servicing isn't cheap. The blades aren't cheap. And you need to have specific needles as well. So, with all things considered, do you really need a serger? And I'm going to show you some of my garments that I've sewn completely without a serger. It's knit and woven. I only have one knit example, but it's actually a really good one. And my other knits, I actually sent off for sponsored projects. So yes, I have sewn things for sponsorships and didn't use a serger even for the knits. So they are completely a great garment on the outside, and I think they have a lot of merits as well. So let's get to it. All right, there's no question that using a serger to sew knits is one of the most preferred ways to sew your knits, and I completely agree. I've done that before. I did it professionally for clients and made prototypes that had to look like they were factory made so they could get their foot in the door with a factory to produce it. So I understand that, and I have a really nice serger. It's definitely showing its age now, but it actually did a really great job for me, and I could do cover stitch and serging, 4-thread, 3-thread, 5-thread, all kinds of stuff, and it was a home model, right? So it worked really well, and I still use it, obviously, but for the stream I do tend to try and make things as simple as possible, just in case you don't have a serger. And that being said, for this Sunday V-neck by Friday Pattern Company, I decided to sew completely with a single needle, or what I call a single needle is a straight stitch only. So what did that mean? So it meant that, I still needed the elasticity, and I got it, so here's my hems and my side seams. None of my seams pop. They're all completely fine. This garment is very soft, cuddly to wear. It got a stain on it right off the bat after I made it, so it ended up being a jammy shirt, plus the color palette worked better for that. And I don't notice at all. In fact, I completely forgot that's how I sewed it until I saw it in my laundry the other day, and I thought, you know what? It's time to do a check-in with everybody and show them how this garment is faring, because I didn't sew it with a serger. So you can see on the side seams here, the edge is slightly rolling very gently. It's very soft. It doesn't scratch, where a serger thread can be a little bit scratchy, especially for people that are sensitive to that. I did top stitch this side seam, and it still doesn't pop at all. And on the armhole here, it's a raglan, so it's this is the armhole and shoulder seam. All I did was a straight stitch, same thing, fully stretchy. And then on the hems, I did 2 parallel rows of stitches, but you could use a twin needle in a home machine to get that kind of fake cover stitch look. But if you don't want to do that, you can just do 2 rows and sew as parallel as possible. It does have that little rolled edge. It doesn't bug me at all. In fact, this hem doesn't even flip up in the laundry, which is really nice. So the neckline here, it's a V-neck. I did actually a really good job. I'm pretty impressed. And I did top stitch it around the edge here. And you can see that I could have probably trimmed this a little bit closer, but because it has this little bit, it opened up and rolled kind of away from itself. And it's because that usually the fabric will roll towards the right side of the fabric, and you can usually see that. In fact, it's one of the ways you can tell some knits which side's the right side, which one's the wrong side. So you can see that it has this gentle roll edge, but look at how low profile it is. I mean, it really is not obtrusive. You can see it is no more than what a serger would be. I do not notice this when I'm wearing it and how it feels. It's very soft, and it looks totally fine from the outside. No one would ever know. So if you ever run into your home ec teacher, he's not going to say, hey, did you not serge that? He'll never know. Don't worry about it. All right, so that is the knits, and I do this a lot on knits. I've done it on underwear. I've even done it on, you know, things for sponsored streams. So I trust you can do it. Just make sure you follow some instructions on how to do it. You know, stretch your seam as you sew. If you were to Google, how do I sew knits without a serger, you'd probably run across a few articles. And I highly recommend checking out what Threads Magazine says. I always refer to them for some of that really trusted, tried and true information for that. All right. Okay, this is the Amelia dress by Green Bee Patterns. I don't think it's in circulation anymore, but I really love this pattern, and I've sewn it a couple times. I think maybe I've only sewn it once on stream, but I've probably made 4 or 5 of these. It's kind of a go-to because you can use quilting cotton, which is readily available to us, and we know how hard sometimes it is to find fabric suitable for garment making. It's cut on the bias, and so that makes it possible to use the quilting cotton. And you're gonna see these dresses look totally fine from the outside. They have some issues that are unrelated to not serging them, and that is because it doesn't have a proper armhole. It just has this little slit. So there's a lot of stress right here, and my dresses tend to rip right there. So you'll see some rips in there, but that is unrelated to the serging. All right, so the bodice on this bird's one, this is one of my oldest ones. It's very tired. I love it. I love how lived in it feels. It's very comfortable. The quilting cotton is super soft. You can see how faded it is now. And the skirt is cut on the straight grain. So the bodice is on the bias, the skirt is on the straight grain. And the other Amelia I'm gonna show you, it's all on the bias. All right, so let's turn it. All right, so you can see this, I didn't put interfacing in the neck facing here, so it is a little bit crumpled. I just pulled these out of my closet. I didn't do anything to them. I wanted to show you without having done any prep to them. I opened up all my seams, all my straight seams, and I just top stitch on either side. So the shoulders and the center front are just like that. And then the side seam here, because of this style of non-armhole where it's just a slit, you know, because I don't have a continuous circle, I had to incorporate the seam finish of the side seam in the hem of the sleeve, and that's why you see that it's hemmed under here, just because I couldn't really stop right there. You'll see I did on this one, and it's you know. So on the skirt here, because it is not on the bias, you're going to see a tiny bit more fraying. This is about all I get. And the angle of the side seam actually creates a bit of a bias there, so it gets nice and not raveling on the side seam here. And I also top stitched this as well. This is the most I get, but it's soft and fuzzy. I love this. This dress is super comfortable, and I really love that because the serging definitely adds some weight. I mean, I love French seams. You definitely know that about me. But there's just something so lightweight and flat about the way I like to finish these seams, and I really like it. All right, so let's look at this last Amelia here. So you can see this one, again, ran into your home ec teacher on the street. She's not gonna say, did you not use a serger on that? She's not ever gonna be able to tell. Same thing, I opened the seams, top stitch, shoulders, side seams. This one still has a rip right there. And then, let me show you the inside here, because this neckline facing is actually pretty nice. I did a rolled hem on this neckline facing, right? You always leave this edge raw, so that's nothing new right there. But on this hem facing here, this is just a rolled edge. And it's not too hard. It's not my favorite thing to hem, but it's actually not too hard because there's a nice curve there. And on this one, I didn't roll hem it. I just turned it once and top stitch it. And this one does have an interfacing. This one actually lays really nicely, and it's probably because it has that interfacing in there. So you can see I didn't iron this. It just naturally does that. Like, what facing does that, right? It's pretty nice. It's probably partly because the bodice is on the bias and the facing has the interfacing. All right, and so you can see here I didn't carry that hem into the side seam. And again, this isn't anything to do about the serging, except for the fact that you need to figure out a way to finish this edge. If you were serging this would actually be harder to finish this because your transition into the hem of this opening here would be pretty tricky. But you could just pre-serge the whole thing and then turn it back. So there's that. All right, and then the skirt, same thing. This one's completely on the bias. But like I said, there's just really not much unraveling. It's all soft. I I've had this a couple of years. The other one I've had at least 5 years, and it gets worn plenty during the summer. It looks really good. Here is my Scout tee, and I have cut this on the bias because, like I said, fabrics on the bias don't tend to unravel very much, and they don't keep unraveling once you've cut them on the bias, and the edges stay nice and soft. And so you can see for this project I opened up all the seams, just pressed them open, and then I top stitched on either side of the seam. I didn't need to do that, but it does give added assurance that it's not going to unravel, and on the bias it won't. But if it wasn't on the bias, that would be a really great solution. So are you saving a step by not serging it? No, because you are sewing the top stitching, but you don't have to have the machine. So there's that advantage. And you can see on the shoulders, I did the exact same thing here. And on the armhole, I pressed the seam allowance towards the sleeve, just left it raw, and it's really soft. Like, I know this probably looks a little bit messy to the folks out there that are just cannot believe I wouldn't finish the edges, but the thing is, sergers haven't always existed, and French seams are really nice. I like how smooth and clean finish that is, but I still maintain that this is really soft and really lightweight and very flat. It's very low profile to not use any finishing at all if you can get away with it. And a lot of fabrics would be appropriate. So let's see, and on the hems are just rolled, neck and sleeve are just bound. And let's look at it from the outside. So get a good look and see how it looks on the inside here. And you can't even tell on the right side. You just see my top stitching here. It's about 1/8 of an inch on either side. No top stitching on the armhole, and then top stitching on the shoulder. That's a pretty simple garment. This particular Scout I custom fit to me with darts in the back here. So that's the only thing I did besides cutting it on the bias. All right, well, I hope that was helpful for you if you're trying to decide whether you want to get a serger or not. And if you want to go down that road, go for it. Sergers are really fun. I love mine, and it's really useful. But if you've just been kind of on the fence and you just don't really feel like you want to take that on, or you don't want that expense, then maybe put it off for a little while and try some of these techniques out and see what you think. You can experiment with things. Remember, sergers haven't been around for that long when you look at the grand scheme of how long we've been sewing clothing. You can use French seams, you can use a zigzag stitch. I use those as well. And I just really love the raw feel of the fabric. It's nice and soft, and it's lower profile. It's more comfortable against the skin, and it weathers really well, you can see. So maybe not all fabrics are suited for it, but you can always do a test and try it out, and try it on the bias or the straight grain and see what works for your project, or try a lining or something else. So, you know, think outside the box and give it a shot. So support me any way you can. I really appreciate it, even if it's sending me $1 or putting a like or a comment or subscribing. It really helps the channel. I love making these videos for you, and I hope you like them too. Happy New Year, happy sewing.